I'm Brad, and this is my co-host Tyler, and today we review How to Lose Friends and Enchant People by Cale Darnagie.
It's a real book.
It's a real book, guys. Totally is. In my world, it's a real book.
It's a real book. And you think we're joking, but we've actually homebrewed a mechanic into our D&D campaigns where we reskin books and put them in there.
I have a list of 150 different books that I made up. And I have topic lines and things in all of them, too.
What's your favorite book that you've come up with?
Oh, don't ask me that. And I have to pull up my sheet.
Well, okay, all right. I can tell you mine off the top of my head. My favorite book that I came up with was Wands. How do they work?
Oh, that is a good one.
So there's a pretty good one, or Magic for Dummies. I think that's a fun one too.
That's pretty funny. And you give to the party wizard and you give to the brand new player wizard, right?
Yeah.
Actually,
right?
maybe you don't. They might take that the wrong way. Right. Don't do that to your new players.
Magic for Dummies sounds like a little bit more of a Eldritch Knight or a Paladin book, where it's just like you can do something.
Or really Arcane Trickster or something like that, right?
Yeah. That's pretty good.
Here's how to get started. You're not a real wizard.
Yeah, you're not real.
You're not a real one. You can do some stuff, but you're not a real one. All right.
You're not a spellcaster.
You're not a real spellcaster. You can cast spells, but you're not as good as the other guy.
Right.
He'll always will do it better than you.
Yes.
Just remember that. But it's okay. You can always stab him in the back, right?
So what does Cale Darnagie have to say about how we can best lose friends and enchant people in the game of Dungeons and Dragons?
Well, just to kind of, cue us into what the topic of this video is, right? It's about role-playing, right? Like,
role-play.
And that's one of the three main pillars of D&D. Go figure. If you didn't know that, D&D, right, has three pillars, right? One of them is combat. Mm-hmm. Most people like combat, right? Yeah. The other one is exploration, finding out new things, going to new places, seeing new sights or imagine new sights, right?
Yep.
And then the other one is like the social aspect, role playing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so you're going to spend a decent amount of time at any table dealing with role play like scenarios.
Yeah. Although I think that would usually probably go into your table culture. I agree with you. I think most tables do go into lots of role playing scenarios, but I mean, I've certainly played in a few campaigns where it was like, yeah, role play light. We're just going to go stabby everything. This is a stabby game. Great. I'll make my stabby character. The stabbiest character that can stabbiest the best than anybody else. But
so the way but
if you're not in that game,
right? Yeah,
you're gonna do some role playing, right? It is called a tabletop role playing game, right?
That's a good point, yeah. And it does depend on your party's composition because maybe you're competent in some of these like charisma based skills, and sometimes you're maybe not.
No, I think that's a good point to go into, right? Yeah, like sometimes things are role based. You have the role based aspect of role playing and that social aspect of the game versus the skill based, like your actual player skill based of just role playing in general, improv and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that party composition. I mean, if you've got the party that's got the warlock, that charisma is like their main thing,
or a bard,
or
a paladin,
right,
or a sorcerer who just like.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Yeah.
Drips with that charisma.
Exactly.
Which I want to know what that really looks like. What does that really look like? Dripping with charisma. That's such an interesting phrase to say. Like,
yeah.
What is it?
I think maybe it comes down to that part with Obi-Wan, like Ian McGregor Obi-Wan saying hello there. I think that's the epitome of
I never got that from that, but that's okay.
Well, there's a bunch of droids that are about to blast him away, and he says, hello there. And they all go, you know what? This guy's all right. We shouldn't shoot him. Let's let him fight with Grievous.
But that's just because the droids are dumb, right?
We're talking a lot of Star Wars.
All right,
that's my bad.
Next topic, next video. Move on.
So
just kidding, guys. We're not the video's not done.
The way I like to put it is like, yeah, you could have your party that's like dripping with charisma, and I affectionately, I named the other type of party the Micey My Kill.
In other words, the rogue.
Yeah.
Who doesn't put points to charisma.
Barbarians, fighters.
You're the guy that decided to make charisma your dumb stat.
Exactly. Yeah. Why I guess actually How to Train Your Dragon probably said it best, where he's like, why would I read books about the things when I could just kill the things that are in the books?
That's right. And then loot it too, right?
And then loot it, yeah. My see it, my kill it, my loot it.
Because there is no I in team, but there is a my in this case.
Yeah, there's a my in this case.
Or me, I guess, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, so skills are like a big piece of any D&D campaign.
And it's especially the role playing skills, right? Your deception checks, your intimidation checks, your persuasion checks, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's something worth saying that, like, if you do have a lot of people that charisma dumped stat, a group can decide to broaden that scope to say, for instance, we did this with you for your wizard, where you could use intelligence as your persuasion. Yeah. So you were making a logical argument.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know too, that's not the standard way, but it is. Would be a homebrew. It is a. Well, it's not homebrew. It's a variant rule.
There you go.
I believe it's a DMG.
Okay.
Maybe I'll quote later or tell you guys later where it's at. But it is like a variant rule in the DMG where you can use a different stat, like, intelligence in this case, right, for a skill check. And that was fun as my wizard too. Yeah. Because I had made my charisma my dump stat.
Yeah.
So it was nice to sit there and present the logical arguments for things in a logical manner and win sometimes.
Yeah, you did a good job.
It worked with some NPCs, but not everyone. But it worked. But it was a cool way to bring in an aspect of those skill checks without just saying, well, I can't do it at all anyway, right? Like,
yeah, totally. And I mean, if you're playing the barbarian, your charisma's probably
flex your muscles.
That's a good point.
For my intimidation. You want to mess with this?
Yeah. So you can
and
use
my axe.
You can use like a strength check essentially as your intimidation check.
Yeah.
You're not going to persuade, I haven't done that yet, you can intimidate.
But that would be fun.
That would be cool.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
I like that idea. The barbarian that's like, see this muscle?
Exactly.
See this gun? Yeah. Its name is Barry.
Yeah.
Do you want Barry to do the talking for you? No? Okay, then talk to me. Or my buddy who's the bard.
Speaking to the mic, I brought a second.
That's right. There you go. That's right. That's awesome.
That's not too hard. That's good. You made a good point earlier. I mean, we've talked about this before, but charisma checks are a little bit backwards from other checks. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, like
you put that really well.
It is really kind of funny that, like, you think, like, when you do another check, right? Like, I want to, let's say your character, your PC, right, he's in jail. Like, I want to I want to bend the bars to get out.
Yeah.
Usually I'll tell your DM, I want to bend the bars, and maybe I'm just going to man it with my big beefy arms, right? Yeah. And then the DM will say, okay, great, roll your athletics check, right?
Or straight strength if they think that you're
if you're not proficient, right? Yeah. But and they'll set the DC for what it should be, and you roll, and if it succeeds, you bent them bars and have at it. You break out of jail, right? But with skill checks, it's usually different. And generally the way I've usually always played tables too, and I don't know if this is just because I don't know if it was in a previous edition it was like this, or just the habit and just the culture that people got into doing it, but with their skill checks, with the charisma based or your I guess your role playing type checks, they're backwards, where you will do something first and then roll to see how well it did.
Right.
And you could have a really compelling argument. You as a player could role play that persuasion check spot on really well.
Yeah.
And then you roll the nat 1, and it's like, well, doesn't matter. You did really good. It failed.
It failed. Well, and you make a really great point. I think that there's not a lot of people that, so you say, I want to climb the side of the building, scale the side of the building. As a DM, I never pushed and said, well, how do you want to do that?
Although some DMs do. They do want to say how to do it. And you may say, well, there's handholds, or I'm going to climb the tree, or I want to Jackie Chan it up in the corner, right? Like bounce between the corners and go up.
Yep.
Like,
well, and in a lot of cases, maybe that's like how, like when you ask how, it's like make a case for athletics versus acrobatics. Whereas in charisma checks, it's like, well, what do you want to persuade them? How do you want to persuade them? Because I think it's mostly because at its heart, doing these persuasion checks, these charisma-based checks are fun.
Yes,
it's fun to kind of like say the right thing, or to like, be engaged in the story in that way.
And I would say, even for people who maybe are a little timid or not as experienced, I guess, as well role playing the table, the reality is, in all honesty, it is fun. It can be intimidating sometimes to want to start and want to do it, and it's hard, but I would encourage you to try it and do it. I mean, with time, with practice, you'll get better at it, but it is fun to do it. And again, it is a whole pillar of the game, and so if you just don't do it, you kind of ignore a pillar of the game. And depending upon the composition at your table, I mean, you could be deciding, if your table likes to do it a lot, you may be deciding to discount a whole third of the game. I don't know about you, but I don't show up to play 2/3 of my game. I showed up to play all thirds of it.
Well, yeah, and totally. Put it this way, like, could you imagine sitting through an entire session where it's heavy in combat and your character just sits there? and your character doesn't participate in the combat. Like, apply that to role playing too. You should be finding ways to like engage and working with your DM to find ways to engage in the role playing aspect
and
for
even,
sure.
And definitely, even if you're not, proficient in those skills, let's say, right, there's still ways you can engage in and do. Because again, maybe some guy, I mean, back to our barbarian example, right? Like maybe, you have the intimidation check, but you don't have the persuasion, and the group decides, well, let's try and persuade this guy to let us through. But it's like, okay, great, I'm gonna stand in the back all menacing, like I'm gonna do an intimidation check to enhance the bard's persuasion check, right? And I'm gonna flex my muscles and pound my fists, right? And be like, oh, okay, and then and that can maybe help persuade or help the go along, assuming you roll well, right? In this case.
Yeah, and this is really random, but I think there's a feat you can get that gives you like a couple spells or cantrips.
Yeah.
You could totally just pick up
like friends or something like that.
Yeah, maybe friends or something like that. But then there's the cleric one where you help somebody 1d4.
Guidance.
That's it. Yeah.
No,
guidance is epic.
No, it is good.
1d4 to any check, so you're always just like, you can do this.
Yes, you're like, yes, I can. Oh, look at that!
18. That's good.
I'm gonna roll tonight, and I just got 1d4. That's called good.
That's called.
No, but you're totally right. There are other ways you can help participate, even if you're not proficient in that skill.
Yeah.
And again, like and I think what Wizards have done with a lot of the classes now in D&D is they've tried to help give some of those other aspects or other pillars of the game to classes. I mean, for instance, you look at like the samurai. And a lot of people, that I've talked with about it say, it's kind of a lame aspect. But the samurai gets a set of abilities called like elegant courtier, where they become proficient in some of these persuasion type checks, because it's the idea is that, I'm just not some guy who swings my sword. Like I deal with nobility and other people like that. And it was cool they built that into a fighter class. So, and I think lots of other classes have other ways to tie them into that social pillar of the game. And I think that's actually really neat. That you can be the fighter and still participate and stuff like that, and not just be like, well, I only swing my sword, so wake me up, when we actually decide to roll for initiative, right? Like,
well, and it's a variant rule, but if you're using feats, there is a feat explicitly to just get persuasion.
That's
to
true
just
too.
like pick some
totally
charisma skills to get, and we've homebrewed some things that are like very like select. Like I mean, stone cutting is a really cool example. It's like if you're underground, you can use your proficiency for history checks, right? And it's like, that's very specific. And so we did one that was like that, where we said, you can use your proficiency when intimidating or persuading dwarves.
Right.
And so this dwarven character, he has like these proficiencies and these extra stuff. He's nowhere near like a skill monkey, but in certain situations that makes sense for the character, it's it's still fun.
He can shine and be like, I'm the dwarf guy, man. You got to talk to the dwarf, you hit me up, right? Otherwise, I will help you other ways, but I'm the voice when it comes to interacting with the dwarves, which was a cool thing to kind of, a cool way to bring out, a dwarven heritage, in the game, which was neat.
So let's talk about, because we've talked a lot about skills, we've said some stuff about spells. They are not on the same level.
No, you're totally right. What I think happens a lot of times with people, or they try to say, well, oh look, I got nat 20 and I have a really big bonus to my persuasion check, and so he should just agree to do what I say.
Yeah,
and at least me as a DM is like, well, no. Skill checks are not spells, and skill checks are not mind control.
Right.
As much as we may want a really good roll to be mind control, it isn't.
Yeah.
I
mean, walk around like YouTube, maybe even in the comments of this video, people are like probably going like, kill yourself, and it's like, I'm not just gonna give you a roll that's gonna make me do that.
Right.
Well,
I mean, it's kind of funny, right? You bring it like we talked about Star Wars before and Obi-Wan, right? It's like, Obi-Wan, right? These are not the droids you're looking for. Or the guy's like, do you want death sticks? You don't want death sticks. He's not rolling a persuasion check there, man. He's using a spell. Like that is charm person right there.
He'll contrast that with Han Solo, who actually is making the persuasion checks.
Right. Because he doesn't have the Force. He doesn't have the magic.
And sometimes with dire consequences.
He can't wave his fingers and use magic.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works on his favor, sometimes it doesn't.
And I mean, Qui-Gon tried, okay, this is too much Star Wars, but Qui-Gon tried it on that one dude and it didn't work on him.
That's right.
So like sometimes the spell fails too. Yeah.
Right. Magic won't always work. But again, there's a clear distinction between the two. And that's why it's fun to play a bard. You can roll, and if it doesn't work, then great. I'll do
a spell instead.
Let me strum my strings.
Right.
And now you'll walk down the sewer, just like I want you to.
Just like I said.
Just like I said. You said you want to, but now you will.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's important to remember that, yeah, skills are not spells, and spells are not skills, and they each have their place. But I mean, I was just saying too, maybe you're not proficient in persuasion because, well, hey, I got charm person. Why do I need to make the roll? I'll just charm people with my spells.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think there is a clear difference between the two, and it's good to remember that and to play into that too. If that's why you want to play your character but not do the skill rolls. You can still participate in that social pillar of the game
for sure.
Right. Not through the skill checks, even though it's most commonly done through skill checks.
And I gotta tell you, read any fantasy book, watch any like good fantasy like movie and stuff, and you'll see this, like these kind of skill checks or people trying to persuade people for one thing or another. They fail often.
Yeah, they do. And you shouldn't be afraid of failing, right? That's that's part of D&D, right? We play the game not to always roll 20s or roll really higher on everything.
Yeah.
Right? That's part of the fun of the game, that there is that random chance with stuff where you won't succeed all the time.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean you lose the game, right? I don't want to say there's any losing in D&D, but that does bring up new fun and interesting ways the game can continue on and can move on, right? When you didn't succeed at it.
Yeah, I mean, if Han Solo had just like passed his check, shoot, we went Star Wars again. I went Star Wars again.
We're on a Star Wars kick tonight, guys. Here we go. You can't stop now. You got to say it now.
Well, I mean, on his freighter with Chewie after they beam up the Millennium Falcon with Rey in it and stuff.
Oh yeah.
If he had just passed his deception check, and you see the Red Guard or whatever they're called, they're standing there like, hey, we're gonna kill you. There's no one left to swindle, and he's just like, that guy's a liar, and the guy goes, yeah, you're probably right, you're okay, and then he walks off the ship. There's no movie.
That's right.
The conflict like makes it interesting,
and the conflict and the drama that brings helps make the game fun and interesting.
Yeah, I think reading the scenario is important too, right? Because you can walk yourself into a situation that is kind of impossible. Or that is like to say you're asking an NPC to do something that like it's illogical, like that just wouldn't.
Right, like trying to persuade a Buckingham Palace guard to let you see the Queen of England, right?
Right. Yeah.
I don't care what.
That's a great example.
I don't care what your percentage chance on the die is to help succeed on something, right? That's gonna fail.
Yep.
You know, but that's a great case where you're right. You're not gonna persuade that NPC, and as a PC, like they can maybe be difficult sometimes to accept, to say, well, shouldn't everything be possible? Should it just be really hard? And I would say, yeah, for a big part, like, yeah, that probably is the case where lots of things may be hard. You can try whatever you want. Like, nobody's going to stop you from trying to persuade the Buckingham Palace guard, right, to let you in. But, yeah, some things just are impossible. But that's okay because, in Dungeons & Dragons, we have magic.
Yeah, it's true.
That's what the charm person really is really well. I know I can't persuade the guard. I know I can't intimidate him to let me in, right? He'll probably kick my butt if I try.
Well, and I mean that's part of the game too, and that's maybe part of why you say like, well, how do you want to persuade them? Because as a DM, I know for me, I'll sometimes have a DC in mind of like, oh, it'll be pretty hard to talk your way through this thing. And as the person role plays it, I'm like, you know what, you did a really good job, and I'll lower that DC.
Right.
And then I'll let them roll and say, it's pretty much a given at this point. I'm putting the DC at 5, and if they nat 1 it, then it's like, okay, well, we got to come up with a reason why that failed. But if they get above a 5 in that scenario, or you might say the way they role played it was really bad, and it's like now it's a 30. Like this guy doesn't like you, and that's rough. But again, the drama should be fun. It shouldn't be discouraging.
I think that aspect we were just talking about there too is important to discuss and understand your table culture with things, right? Because I mean, every DM's different, and some DMs may not play with it like that. But I think it's good to know if you're getting into a character that wants to excel or be good at these social, these social skills of the game, right? To get to know how that works,
right?
Because I mean, to your point too, like with me, I'm very similar, but at the same time too, if you do good enough for yourself and you just role play well, I might not even have you roll. I'll just say, yeah, that was good enough. I'll just let you. Don't even roll. It just you succeed, right? Because you did a good job role playing.
Yeah.
Not everybody may like that. They may say you should roll anyway. I think the player maybe thought about it. He put time into it. Maybe. In between sessions, he thought about, well, how can I persuade this NPC to go about doing something, right? And if I feel like, at least with my style, right? If a PC puts the time into it, I want to reward them for their effort of putting into the game, right? And so I may just say like, yeah, you just pass because it was good enough. But again, I definitely agree though too, like with if the scenario is where the DM is setting a DC for that social check, then yeah, I think it's great to adjust that DC based on how well the NPC role plays it. But that also comes down to, right, in a way, like with the way we try to do social skill checks, right? They're different for whatever reason why than a lot of other skill checks where we wait for the PC to do something first and then we decide, okay, now I need to roll or not roll or how hard it may be.
Right.
Instead of just saying, hey, I want to persuade this guy, and you leave it at that and let him roll and then and leave a, and then go. And some tables may do that. I'm actually curious to see if that's how you guys actually play it out, or if you kind of do it, I guess the other traditional way we were talking about. Let us know in the comments about that. I'm actually curious to see how you guys play that out normally.
Yeah, maybe another common thing is opposing skill checks. So I roll, and I get a 3. This dice hates me.
Yeah, because it's like on a night. So this means you do whatever I want. Oh, wait, that just goes against what I said, right?
Well, yeah.
With that bad enough roll, it is mind control now, right?
Maybe, yeah. Well, and
I want a sandwich, Tyler.
Opposing skill checks.
Sandwich.
Opposing skill checks can be good too. Like somebody's trying to deceive this obvious, like, roguish, like under city mastermind or something like that. And it's like he's got a huge, like, bonus to his skill and whatever, and you want to insight check somebody or you want to deceive check one of the other players, and you want to make them kind of earn it, and so they have to roll an insight against his deception or something. Sometimes that's fun instead of just setting a DC. And when I do that too, I do it because it's fun to add the drama to, right? It's I mean, when it's a big moment, it's like, oh man, this you guys, and I do it to add drama because it could be fun. Like, oh, if you win the roll, then you guys succeed, and that can bring a lot of fun, a lot of extra fun to the table. Like, oh, we succeeded, right? And, or on the flip side too, like, oh no, like we didn't do it. Oftentimes when I do that too, I actually will roll openly outside the table so the PCs can see it, just to kind of add in that extra tension to it and make them, and they don't think I'm, fudging the dice. But totally, like you might be on this one.
I didn't fudge that one. You saw it.
I can see through it. It looks solid. I don't know.
I just
suck at it.
You are not good at rolling.
Hates me.
You don't need new dice. You need you need a new life.
I'm gonna roll left-handed.
You're a new hand.
Hey, that's a 20, baby.
20.
Heck yeah.
Roll
left-handed.
Left-handed rolls. That's the magic.
That's the magic.
I was rolling left-handed.
There you go.
That's the trick, guys. Roll your dice.
They were left-handed D20s.
Roll your dice left-handed.
Anyhow, that's role playing. We are Motley Mimic. Thanks for hanging out. Catch you next time. Like and subscribe. Here's some inspiration for your next video.